Hello everyone, and welcome to another tutorial in the Go-To Shell series. In this series, we'll discuss tips, tricks, and techniques for shell scripting in 5 minutes or fewer. Before we begin, first, due to its ubiquity and my experience with it, we're going to use Bash, specifically version 4 and higher. Secondly, I'm not perfect, so if you do spot any errors or mistakes on my part, let me know in the comments or by email, and I'll try to get that corrected in the video. Welcome, ladies and gents. Today's lesson is going to be about redirection, specifically file stream redirection. When a process starts, you get standard input, standard error, and standard output to work with. And Shell, Bash or otherwise, has the ability to change the way information is sent between those. And we'll learn a little bit more about that today. Most of what I'm going to show you today is portable to most shells for sure. Some of it might be a little less portable when I get into some of the process substitution and whatnot. Guys, if you notice anything I do is not portable, go ahead and put it in the comments. Even if I don't update the video when I do one that shows something Bash specific, it helps other people learn. So by all means, go ahead and call that out. Before we get started on the timer, let me show you the files we'll be dealing with today. We have 2 scripts that we'll be going through that show you how to do what I'm talking about, which is stream redirection. We have a data file that simply contains the following. Some lines that we'll be using with grep to help us filter our output and show that it's doing what we want. And then I have a couple of scripts I've written. One is a script that only reads from standard input. It will refuse to read from a file, and that'll be important later in one of our examples. And then I have a couple of scripts that will either write to just standard error or will write a message to standard error and standard output. I'll go ahead and cat those files out. There's the read standard in, and this is both of the right ones, okay? So there's your first one, there's your second one. I do that because some people like to pause the video and copy these out. All right, let's go ahead and start the timer on this. There we go. All right, let's take a look at the basics one. So we're going to call the grep command throughout here, and we're going to pass hello as the string we want to search for, and data is that file we looked at that has a few lines in it. The greater than syntax is how you say, I want to send some stream to something else. Specifically, I want to send it to a file. Using the number 1 means we're going to send standard out to this file. This file could be named anything you want, but we're going to send standard out. Standard input is file descriptor 0, standard output is 1, and standard error is 2. It's important to note that using only one of these greater than symbols means overwrite the file every time. If you use 2 of them, it means append the results of whatever's being sent through to the file that exists here. All right? You can do the same thing with error output. We wrote that script ahead of time that just writes a line to standard error. I have to use the 2 greater than syntax here to be able to capture standard error. If I didn't do this, or if I use just the 1, it would try to capture the wrong stream. And yes, you can use the double greater than syntax to append. The other thing I want to mention is that file descriptor without a number in front of it, so this redirection without a file descriptor number in front of it, is always assumed to be 1, meaning standard out. And this is pretty much the way you will always see it when people are trying to redirect standard out. You will almost never see this happen. I also wrote that script that writes to both standard out and standard error. You can explicitly say to send both of them to the same file name, and that works. The way you'll usually see it is to first redirect standard out to a file name, and then you say send standard error to whatever standard input is with this &1 syntax. This gets into how to handle file descriptors, and we might do that in another video in more detail, but that's what that means. Send standard error stream to the descriptor 1, which is standard output stream. Bash also supports this way of doing it, and I don't recommend you use it because it's not portable, and frankly, it's kind of dumb. It's very confusing to remember along with all the other, how to open files and stuff in Bash. I'm not going to run it because frankly it's just going to create a bunch of files that take a bunch of time to look at. You can run these on your own and prove they do what I'm saying. The second one, I'm only showing you this to let you know that file redirection does not have to be limited to standard out and standard error that are created when process starts up. You can open your own files at any time. Okay, I'm going to open file descriptor 5 and then I'm going to echo the pi number into it. and then closed it out. And that works too. You can, there's our redirection symbol. You can do that. That's perfectly legal in Bash for sure, and I think it's pretty portable in most shells. All right, let's move on to the last thing here. The last thing we're going to discuss is reading standard in. We've talked about how to redirect standard out and standard error, but standard in is always sitting there waiting for you. I have this script here, read standard in. It will sit there and it will hang until something comes in from standard input. This script cannot read files. It will only read file descriptor 0 when it starts up, which is standard input for itself. I'm going to hit Control-C to break that. And I'm going to show you that if we try to give it the data file, it has no idea what to do with it. It just completely ignores it. However, if I say connect the data file using the less than symbol, okay, connect the data file to standard input, suddenly my program can read it. That's how reading standard in works. If you have a program that can't read a file by passing the file name to it, but can read standard input, you use this syntax. There are two other examples I'm going to give you, and I'll warn you, these will be separate videos in themselves. The first one is piping. Now I'm going to show you a useless use of cat. I'm just going to cat out data, and then using a pipe, I'm saying connect cat's standard output to the standard input of our script that we have already proven can only read standard in. And it works because the pipe symbol connected standard out to standard in. The last one is process substitution, which again is a whole separate video by itself. But basically we say we want to read, and you all know the subshell syntax, right? If you don't, there will be a video on it soon. All right, so we're going to read data. All right, works as expected. If you put the less than in front of this, you've created process substitution. So this gets evaluated, and the contents of it become a temporary file. Not actually on disk. I might get yelled at for that, but it does. Anyway, our time's up. The way you would read this is just by saying redirect this file to the standard input of our script. All right, don't worry, guys, if that one's a little bit confusing. Process substitution itself is a little confusing. But thank you very much for watching this. As always, I wasn't trying to cover every single thing you can do or every way you can do redirection. I was simply trying to get two big points across. One is that you have 3 different streams every time you start a process: standard in, standard out, standard error. And the other thing is that you can redirect them back and forth. You can point them to other file descriptors. You can make your own file descriptors. You can rely on completely other, different features of Bash, like process substitution or piping, anonymous piping, even named piping, I think. No, I don't know about that, but either way, lots of different ways to redirect streams around. What I'd really love to see is you guys leave comments and ask specific questions, because I've got this 90-second crash course series I do where I can take a bunch of those and show those examples and maybe help, give you real world examples of it, whereas this is kind of more instructional material. Anyway, thanks a lot. Give it a thumbs up if this helped you, and also if you subscribe, it helps me get the videos out there. Appreciate it. Have a great day.